Hello, it's Betting Weekly Game Bet Match, and it's a big one this week. It's the French Open. It's the second major of 2024 from the clay in Paris. And breaking down the men's draw, which was made yesterday on Thursday. I'm delighted to say joining me, Nigel Seeley, is our ATP Tour senior handicapper. It is Sean Calvert. Good evening, Sean. Sorry, it's a late show today. I've just travelled back from Geneva. I'm sorry about that, but good evening to you, my friend.
Well,
how are you?
The same, basically. Coughing, spluttering, sniffing. I went to the doctors the other day. She said it'll be a couple of months. I said, "Oh, that's nice." she said, because it's a viral infection, there's nothing they can, it's a virus. There's nothing they can do. They can't do anything for it. She said, "I've seen hundreds of these this year. It'll be a couple of months." They said, that's probably from when it started. So, looking on the bright side, I've probably got about 6 weeks. So that takes me all through the grass season, and
you get hay fever then. You get hay fever.
I should be fine by the US Open.
Oh, you'll be all right. You will this year.
This year's been an absolute disaster for me in terms of health. But I'm soldiering on. That's all you need to know.
Well, I mean, we're going to come on and talk about the French Open. Well, it's the main talking point this couple of weeks, the action over in Paris on the clay. But just come back from Geneva today. What a great city that is, Sean. Have you been there?
No, I've not been to Geneva.
Oh, mate, it's very expensive.
Counts me out.
Very pricey.
I'm out straight away.
What a place!
It looks a bit posh
place.
to me.
I mean, no, it was a night. There was hardly anybody. No queues. Nobody around. Walking around. No queue for drinks. Nothing. I think. One court.
Yeah, I mean, normally, obviously, it was Novak Djokovic was there this year, wasn't he? But so I imagine there was more people. Normally, it does look like my sort of event, i.e., nobody there. I noticed you can sit behind the baseline as well, which I like. And
yep. If you want to pay 200 quid.
You see, it all sounds a bit pricey to me. I've looked at this before and I've thought, nah, it's not my sort of cup of tea.
To be honest, it was very, very nice, and the city's fantastic, and you get free trains, free buses, free
all that money they've got sloshing around. Fantastic. They can afford it.
I saw the bank manager was out there as well, so killed two birds with one stone. Flew to my Swiss bank account.
I haven't got one.
See the bank manager out there, so it was quite a good trip. But then land in England, bank holiday weekend, Friday at Heathrow Airport, which is one of the worst airports.
I thought you would have flown from Gatwick.
And a 50-minute. Well, I got BA flights to get the cheaper flights and points. They've got the points.
BA fly from Gatwick, don't they?
Well, not Geneva route. They don't. They're not in Geneva. So then 2 hours, 30 minutes on the M25, the worst.
It's horrendous, isn't it? You're on the other side to me, aren't you? You're kind of coming the opposite way. I normally go the other way by the Dartford Tunnel, which is hell. But there's always crashes. I mean, they must be the worst drivers. Apart from places like India and stuff, but the worst drivers kind of in Europe, they've got to be anyone that goes on the M25. The amount of crashes. It's insane. You have to kind of factor in about another 2 hours for your journey sometimes.
It was truly an horrendous journey, and it's given me very little time to come back and speak to you. We've planned this to come on about an hour ago, and I've left it late. So anyway, enough about our trips, enough about our health. Let's get some business. This is the business. This is the big one. It's the French Open. It's a tournament that usually, historically, does well for you, Sean. You've done well on the French Open over the last few years, and hopefully this time around we're cashing again. We're in good shape coming into the tournament. 10.22 units of profit so far. Or if you bet all the plays that we suggested here on Betting Weekly Game Bet Match. So we're looking good coming into it. Bit unlucky last week. Darderi reached the semi-finals over in Lyon. Didn't get any further. They got beat today, but he's not in the final. But anyway, we're in good form. The main talking point of this draw is obviously the condition of the players. We're going to come on to the draw, the break it down the bracket. A lot of people will watch this show for the very first time for the majors. They don't watch us week in and week out, but when the majors come around, a lot of people start betting on tennis for the first time. And welcome along if it's the first time you've watched it. And if you are having a bet for the very first time with BetRivers, Sean, just give us a little bit about the French Open, the conditions, the history of this tournament, and what bettors can look forward to over the next couple of weeks.
Well, it's always very weather dependent because it's played on clay. Last year, the players were complaining about the balls. They were always Babolat balls. They changed to Wilson balls. Last year, they were saying they were very slow and fluffing up. It was quite warm last year, so it wasn't the temperature that made it slow. But there was only 74% holds and 68.1% first serve points won last year against an average of 76% and 69%. So it was definitely slower in 2023 than before. that's despite there being warm weather. So I suspect it's because these Wilson Roland-Garros balls that they're using now are slower. So that's one thing to bear in mind. As far as this, I mean, you say it's a successful tournament. I've had my moments at this tournament, but betting underdogs in the French Open is not. It's not generally going to get you a success unless you hit some really big prices. Only 22% of the underdog winners under 22% of the underdogs have won on average at the French Open. So it's statistically, as far as that's concerned, it's the worst tournament of the year. Generally speaking, that's because best of 5 sets, generally the best player wins anyway. Most of the Grand Slams are not great for underdog winners, but the French is particularly bad for whatever reason. But as far as the weather is concerned, this next 2 weeks doesn't look like there's going to be any major problems. It looks like it's going to be between about 20 degrees and 24 degrees in the first week, so no real rain threatened, although these forecasts have been wrong before, haven't they? So that's sort of where we're at, really, for the French Open.
When you say the heavy, it's not been a great tournament for underdogs. I mean, it is a tournament that Rafael Nadal's dominated for many years. You've had a tournament where you've come into the French Open where there has only been realistically 3, maybe 4 players who could win the tournament. So you've had very, very heavy one-sided favourites from round 1 all the way through potentially to the final. This time around, it's got a different feel, a different look about it.
This is the most open French Open that I can really think of. I mean, since we've been doing this a similar amount of time. When it was around about the time I started doing this, was Nadal was he'd already won the French Open. So for the last almost 20 years, or whatever it is, it's always been Nadal. Can Federer beat him? Then can Djokovic beat him? And it's always been Nadal dominated, hasn't it? But this year, with the injuries concerning two of the market leaders, Carlos Alcaraz, Jannik Sinner. Obviously, Nadal has got major problems as well, as has Novak Djokovic. I mean, you've seen him in Geneva struggling badly for form. So it's a very open French Open. I think we might see a couple of big price ones going the full distance. So certainly, maybe to the semis, maybe even to the final this time.
Yeah, it's got that feeling about it. I mean, I remember the first times when I was doing trading on the French Open, Jim Courier was winning the tournament. The American was doing so well. Thomas Muster.
You're showing your age here.
Well, yeah, I remember starting in the newspapers back in 1990 at the Racing Post, and Jim Courier was winning the tournaments. Then Thomas Muster come along and was winning then, and then it was dominated by Gustavo Kursel, the Brazilian. He won it, and that was when I first started becoming a bookmaker. I was trading the tennis at Gustavo Kursel, but so it's always been a real heavy favourite. Those guys were starting around about minus money, some of them, heavy favourites in those kind of matches. So, and then you obviously had Djokovic and Federer, and it's probably the last sort of 15, 20 years, it's only been Novak Djokovic, Federer, Stanislaus Wawrinka.
Yeah, Stan won it
sometimes as well, and only a few of them.
Yeah, Stan was the only one that I can remember in recent memory that won the French Open at a decent price. It's always been Nadal, or Djokovic maybe here and there. Djokovic won it, I think, 3 times. Federer won it that one year, didn't he? I don't think Nadal was in it, was it? When he won, I think Nadal was injured the year that Federer won it.
Wasn't that the year that he got beat by Soderling?
I can't remember. He either got beat by... Well, he definitely got beat by Soderling. I don't know whether it was that year or a different year, but Federer only won it that one time when he didn't have to beat Nadal. So yeah, heavily dominated by Nadal, but those days are pretty much gone now. So this could be a very, very open way. It looks like it has the feel, as you said, of a very open French Open, which we haven't been able to say in the last 15 years or so.
It's got to feel like a very open tennis season for the remainder of the season. The French Open, Wimbledon will be covered here as well, the US Open as well. I think it's going to be very exciting for tennis bettors for the first time in a long time, where we don't have 1 or 2, maybe 3 players dominated because of these injuries that surround Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner. Before we go on to the draw, break the draw down and look at the odds, just one last thing, we'll talk about the French Open. Again, a lot of people might watch this for the very first time or listen to this on podcast form for the very first time. Physically, clay's very demanding, isn't it, on the body?
Yeah.
It's the matches are a lot longer than grass matches because obviously they're grinders. Not necessarily longer in time, but they're longer in terms of rallies and stuff. So it takes a lot of toll on the body. We've got 2 leading contenders, as you touched on there, who have got injury concerns, which is Jannik Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz. This is going to be really hard for those 2 to win it. in these conditions with coming in with any kind of injuries. You need to be 100% at your peak fitness.
Yeah, you do. And I've questioned Sinner anyway many times on this show about his physicality in terms of his suitability to particularly this Grand Slam. You know, his body hasn't been up to it over the years. He's won the Australian Open, yeah, but he didn't. You know, it's a quicker points, much quicker tournament. I've always questioned Sinner. He just doesn't look to me like he has the physicality to win a really tough French Open. You know, if he breezed through, he had an easy draw, winning every match in straight sets, pretty easy then, yeah, maybe. But now he's got this hip problem, which he's talked about, and a lot of noises have come out of Italy saying he wasn't going to play the French Open. He may still not play. You know, we're recording this on Friday night. He could. I doubt it, but he could potentially pull out. We could see several withdrawals between now and Sunday. Even if he plays, let's assume that he plays. I mean, we'll come on to my strategy in a bit, but it's hard to fancy him, isn't it? I mean, this ongoing hip problem, which apparently needs rest and recuperation. It's not like a little tweak where he's, you know, a couple of weeks and he'll be all right. It's been sold as a kind of an ongoing thing, and if he doesn't rest now, he's going to have major problems further on down the line. Alcaraz is a little bit different because he's got an arm injury, and that could be one that has healed by now. But he's had very few clay matches. We only saw him in Madrid, didn't we? And he didn't look like he was hitting his forehand with any freedom. He looked like he was protecting it. He didn't look fit at all. He may be fit now. You know, he may not. So, you know, those are the two, you know, market leaders, really. You put Djokovic in there as well, but he's struggling. I watched him a bit in Geneva today and yesterday. Doesn't seem to have the kind of the physicality. Doesn't seem to be able to keep his top level up for long enough. So a lot of doubts, and those doubts over those top guys have made the next best, if you want to call them that, the Zverevs, the Tsitsipas's, the Rudes. They've made them, in my opinion, too short to bet. So there's a quandary for bettors in this French Open.
Yeah, let's have a look at the draw. The more important draw. Draws are very, very important when you're betting on the major championships, the most important thing we have. Let's have a look at that before we look at the odds. Novak Djokovic is the number one seed. As you said, I watched him in Geneva, how we didn't cash our bets against Hampton. We both would bet over 9.5.
Absolutely criminal.
4 break points. 3-0 up in the second. Yeah, 3-0 up in the second set as well for the overs as well. Both. It was incredible. Djokovic was poor. He was playing at 30%, 40%. He just went there for match practice, and today he got beat by Mahak. I'm not quite sure whether you can turn it on. To me, he's a massive fade. He's a number one seed. In his section, there's obviously loads of people there, loads of big seeds players. It's a 128-player draw. But if it went... We'll look at the projection for the quarterfinals. If it went to the projection of the quarterfinals, he'll play Casper Ruud. Now, Casper Ruud is still got to play his match over in Geneva. It's rain delayed now. We're recording this on Friday night. I don't think there's going to be any chance this evening, probably tomorrow. So he might even play that match. Djokovic will play Ruud in quarter one if it went to the scheduling. Djokovic, obviously a 3-times champion here. Casper Ruud is a 2-time runner-up. In Q2, it would go towards Zverev against Medvedev, but obviously Zverev has the match of the first round where he plays Nadal, the 14-times champion. Zverev is a 3-time semi-finalist. So it'll be Zverev against Medvedev in the top half of the draw. And the bottom half of the draw, which I think looks a little bit tricky, but on paper it looks tricky, but those injury concerns might not make it look tricky. It might be the easiest section. Rublev is scheduled to play Alcaraz. Alcaraz was the semi-finalist here. Last year he got beat by Djokovic in that real strange match. And in Q4... it would be Hurkacz. Can't see Hurkacz getting through, but even despite his good clay form, he will play Jannik Sinner. And despite Jannik Sinner being one of the favourites here and the current Australian Open champion, we question his physicality, but he's only ever made the quarterfinal here. That's his best ever performance back in 2020. So question marks about them. On the draw, if everyone was fit, you would probably want to be positioned in Q1, I would have thought, because you've got Alcaraz and Sinner in Q2, which you don't want to run into. But with doubts about Alcaraz and Sinner, it might not be so bad to be put in the bottom half of the draw. I mean,
I think I've got a strategy here in Q4, if you want to hear it.
Of course we want it. That's what we pay you for.
You might not want to hear it now.
You
might want to hear it in a couple of minutes after you've said something else. I don't know.
No. Well, I just think that if someone handed me this draw, I'd look at it and go, top half, definitely weaker. But then you look at Alcaraz question marks, look at Sinner question marks, and you think, you know what? I might want to be in the bottom half of the draw. So from your strategy, you're in Q4. You want to be in the bottom half.
I think if you take Sinner out of Q4, what have you got? You've got Hurkacz. All right, he's got some reasonable clay stats this season. He's actually got the same service points won and return points won total as Tsitsipas. Tsitsipas is somewhat overrated based on the stats that he's produced this season, which are all right, but they're not his best, and they're not the best in the tournament by any means. You take Sinner out of there. What have you got? Norrie, Baez, who can't handle any power and pace coming at him. Dimitrov, who's got an awful record at the French Open. Tiafoe, who's been on a downward spiral for quite some considerable time now. And the two that I like, and is in a way it's the obvious two, although they are very big prices. It's Tabilo and Jarry, the two Chileans who played so well in Rome.
Well, let's have a look at the odds, Sean. Yeah. Let's have a look before you give us the breakdown of the price. Let's give you the odds to win this French Open. Carlos Alcaraz is plus 240. Novak Djokovic plus 325. Djokovic fade for me. Sinner $5. Zverev plus 650. Now, Sean has said he's probably been the most bet player in the build-up to this tournament because of his win in Rome. His serve dominant performance in that whole tournament was exceptional. But he has got Nadal in round one. It could be Nadal's last ever match.
For me.
Well, it's going to be
way
plus
too
650. Tsitsipas 7. I mean, we were talking 3 weeks ago when BetRivers had him at 28. He's now 7, a quarter of the odds on what he was 3 weeks ago. Has he done enough? Well, they are the public plays, aren't they? Zverev and Tsitsipas. Do you know what? We're making them negatives here, but they're my only two in my book. They're my two in my portfolio.
You didn't get me those prices,
I bet
though.
Tsitsipas No, I bet Zverev at 12, and I bet Tsitsipas.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. But the price they are at this moment we're speaking are poor. Not BetRivers, but the general market. This is the general market price, isn't it?
But what the market has done, the market has realised there's injury concerns for Alcaraz. They've realised there's injury concerns for Sinner. Djokovic is not playing well. No one expects him to do anything. So they've gone for the two obvious picks. And the two obvious picks, without breaking it down, are Zverev and Tsitsipas. And they've been bet down now to a level, which is, Rude. I mean, I can't believe that BetRivers are 10 to 1 Rude. They've been very short on Rude throughout this tournament. They want him on their side. 10 to 1 Rude. I couldn't bet him.
Too short. All these three.
Nadal 16, Rublev 20, Holger Rune 30, Daniel Medvedev 30 to 1, Grigor Dimitrov 75, Auger-Aliassime 75, Taylor Fritz 80, and then you've got these prices: Jarry and Tabilo 100, Hurkacz 100. I can't see Hurkacz doing anything despite his win in Estoril and his clay court heroics this year. I think he's got more of a chance at Wimbledon. But Jarry and Tabilo, I know you like them and you've just mentioned them there, but they do stand out. 100 to 1 these two. 7 to 1 Tsitsipas and Zverev. If Jarry played or Tabilo played Zverev in a one-off match,
he should have beaten him in Rome. Tabilo should have beaten us. It's as simple as that. Tabilo should have beaten Zverev. He smashed him in the first set. Got to he had a couple of break points in the second set. You feel if it had taken one of them, he'd have beaten Zverev. I didn't want him to because I was on Zverev and we cashed on that. But a couple of points away, Tabilo, the level he was playing, if he'd had just had a little bit more composure and carried on playing the way he was playing in the first set instead of kind of holding back and being a bit edgy with it, he would have got to an all-Chilean final, with as it turned out, with Jarry. I just think those two are the standouts in Q3. If you take out Sinner, obviously it's a gamble. I'm gambling on the fact that I don't think Sinner is fully fit, and I don't think he's going to win this French Open based on lack of matches, lack of fitness, lack of stamina, all that stuff. It could go wrong. Obviously, Sinner could turn up and be fine and waltz through that section. I doubt it, but it's possible. But if you're looking at statistics as well, I mentioned the service points won and return points won tells. Tabilo's only 1 point behind Tsitsipas. Tsitsipas is 7 to 1. Tabilo's 100 to 1. Jarry's a slightly different story because he has the ability to beat the best on clay. He's beaten Alcaraz this year on clay. He's beaten Tsitsipas a couple of weeks ago on clay. He's got a couple of tricky matches, but if he gets through that section, he could cause problems as well. So I think the 100 to 1 on those two is quite generous. It's really open, like I said.
Yep, very open. I mean, there is no way in a million years that Zverev is 650 and Tsitsipas is 7 compared to Tabilo 100. You've got to remember as well, Tabilo, if you are watching the show for the first time and you don't really know much about tennis or haven't followed it and you want to bet recreational for the French Open, Tabilo is a man who's reached his semi-finals in his last tournament where he beat Zverev, who's we mentioned there as a bit of a favourite. He should have beaten him in the semi-final, and en route to that final, he demolished Novak Djokovic. I know it probably it was a performance after Novak Djokovic was accidentally hit on the head with a bottle, and I suppose you could blame that.
Wasn't it?
Of course. Do you know what? Mate, at Geneva, bottles everywhere. You're not allowed to bring a water bottle into the...
They don't let you bring... You're talking about plastic bottles or metal bottles or what?
No, like all the water bottles, loads of them everywhere.
You're talking about plastic ones?
They've taken them off. Mixture of all sorts. No, I think the little better ones, the metal ones, and they're not anyway.
Well, they sell that. They try and all the tournaments I've been to, they take your plastic mineral water bottle off you at the gate, and they say you can only come in with the ATP water drop official water supply of the ATP Tour bottle. Which, ironically, is the kind of bottle that knocked Djokovic on the head, and he's involved with water drop. So the irony wasn't lost on me there, but he played upon that. It was hardly painful, was it? It was hardly getting knocked out by Usyk or something. He just got a little knock on the head. Ridiculous.
Well, I'd like to see Djokovic Usyk. That'd be a good one. But the point is that Tabilo here is in the form of his life, played his best tour. His confidence must be the highest he has been. And he's a young player who's going up in the world. And 100-1, this could be a breakthrough tournament for him. And he does represent some big value compared to Zverev. So if you are new and you want a little bit of pizza money, Tabilo is the man for sure at 100-1, Jarry at 100-1. Just go back to the favourites. I'm just really, the only one I really want to talk about is on this market here is Alcaraz. And I'll tell you why I want to talk about it. Because I think, I honestly think Djokovic is done personally. I think I can't see him. I think maybe the end of the year or maybe a farewell tour next year. I think his levels have dropped so much.
Now. It's...
I think his game's up, and I think plus 325. I'm not sure. Sinner, we know we know that he's got problems with his physicality. We know he's not fit, and even if he was fit, I think over 5 sets here at the French Open Enclave, given his record here, he would be a fade for me. Alcaraz does interest me in the top ones, and I tell you why, Sean, because I think if he is fit and he wins the first match 6-1, 6-2, 6-3, as he can do, wins the second match 6-love, 6-2, 6-3, I think there'll be an absolute market reform on Alcaraz, and I think Alcaraz could be an even money shot very, very, very
That's
quickly.
possible, yeah.
So I would be, and obviously we're betting that he could, but if Alcaraz was fit and Alcaraz come in here, we know we're 100% fit, and we knew that the Djokovic's form he is and Sinner's doubts he has, there is no way that Alcaraz would be plus 240 and Tsitsipas 7, for example. I think Alcaraz is the interesting one in this market. I honestly believe that if you are going to have a couple of picks and you want Jarry and Tablo and you want to create a book and want to be a bit more feel a bit more professional in your trading, I think Alcaraz at plus 240 could be the one, because I do think there could be a huge rebase on him if he shows dominant form in the first 2 or 3 matches. That is a big doubt. You might want to do it in play with BetRivers, watch the match and see how you get on. But I do think that could, after week 1, you'd be thinking, can you believe that Alcaraz started here if he come up with form? But we've got to watch the form. It's
you're right. If he comes in and for me, it would be not so much the result, but the way that he's hitting his forehand, which will lead to a positive result, you would imagine. If he's hitting that forehand freely, and people have watched Alcaraz before and seen him at his best, maybe in Wimbledon and finals last year or whatever, and compared to what he was doing in Madrid, it was very, very different. You could tell that he was not wanting to do not wanting to go maximum, if you want to call it that, with his forehand. He was being very careful with it. If he comes to the French Open and plays his first round and he's smashing it all over the place, that is a very telltale sign that he's back in business and his price will drop accordingly. But at the minute, it's we don't know. It's guesswork at the minute.
Yep, guesswork. We'll have to wait and see. It's all going to play out over the next 2 weeks in the French capital over in Paris. If you're going over there, enjoy yourself. The traffic will be a nightmare. It's
not for me.
Road closures will be here. I'm not going. I'm not going this year. Olympic year. Someone told me to avoid Paris like the plague.
Don't need to tell me that.
Do not go there at all. It's an absolute nightmare to get around. I've just done 2.5 hours on a motorway. I don't want to do the same again. So, yeah. So, Sean, just before we go, just give us your picks here to win the men's singles French Open, which starts on Sunday.
the two big priced each ways. I can't have this top of the market business at all. I think it's all wrong. It's all it's not for me. The pretenders, if you want to call them that, are too short. Big question marks over the favourites. So I've taken the two Chileans, Jarry and Tabilo, 100-1. The only other one that I thought might potentially be an all right price was Holger Rune, but you are taking a heck of a chance because his form this season has been awful. Service points won and return points won to 98 on clay this year, which is desperate stuff really for a guy that has pretensions of winning a Grand Slam. But he's gone well here before. If he turns up and everything clicks and he's feeling great and all that sort of stuff, he could be the one at about 30-1 that you might think, okay, I'll take a chance on him. But it is a big chance. Too much of a chance for me, to be honest. I've gone with the value on the two Chilean boys.
Well, I looked at him as well because I thought to myself, Zverev will probably play Holger Rune in the last 16. And if you look at the outright odds currently at BetRivers, you have Zverev at plus 650 and Holger Rune at 30-1. That would suggest that Zverev will start around about minus 300 for that match, minus 330 for that match. There's no way that he's going to start minus that. That's not far off. If Rune's playing well, that's not far off.
He's the one, that
slight favourite
that I think could potentially come here with no form. Let's be honest, he doesn't have any form. He could turn it all around. It's possible. Again, it's a punt, it's a gamble. But if you're asking me for one at a shorter price, then he would potentially be the one. I think I can't see any value in anybody else in the shorter prices.
He carried my money last year, Holger Rune. I'm not quite sure if
I don't think he's emotionally mature enough to win a Grand Slam, but it's kind of a tempting price based on the level we have seen from him in the past.
I do remember, head across to the BetRivers website. They have the outright markets on this, the women's draw as well, and all the first round matches on the men's and the women's draw. Myself and Sean will be back with a podcast on the best bets for round one coming your way. Make sure you subscribe to Betting Weekly Studios on YouTube. Download the podcast Betting Weekly Game Bet Match, and also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Because We Win. Throughout the tournament, we'll be covering every single thing here. We'll do all the hard work so you don't have to. And remember, it's better when we win together, and hopefully we're going to win together over the next fortnight over here in Paris. Just finally, before we go, Sean, Tabilo 100-1, and the pick is
Jarry,
the other pick was
price,
Jarry 100-1, and it's a half the odds 1-2. Now, obviously, if you're not familiar with each way betting terms, BetRivers offer a half the odds 1-2, which means you have two bets. Half of your stake will be 50-1 on both players to make the final, so half of your 100-1 shot, and the other half will be on the player to win the final. So two bets will be split into half. Half of it will be on the win part, 100, and the other half will be making the final at 50-1. Hopefully we can get one of them through, because it's impossible to get them both. One of them through, because in the same section of the draw. Sean, thank you very much for your time. Enjoy it. It's a busy couple of weeks. Lots of stuff coming your way. And we'll be back tomorrow with the best bets on round one. And also Roy Giovanni doing a podcast with myself looking at the best bets on the women's draw. It's all on Betting Weekly Studios. Make sure you subscribe. Take care.